Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 7 through 14. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 7 through 14 serves as our preaching material. That text says, "But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, 'The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall.' Also our enemies said, 'Before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work.' Then the Jews who live near them came and told us 10 times over, 'Wherever you turn, they will attack us.' Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the low points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, 'Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes.'" Again, I want to talk about when the haters come. When the haters come. In a recent survey, my members asked for the pastor to address the matter of dealing with difficult people. So last week we talked about Hannah's praise. 1 Samuel chapter 2 talked about how we should rejoice about God's handling of the wicked and saints. If you're doing anything for the Lord, you ought not be surprised when wicked folk try to create a stumbling block. But if you can learn how to praise your way through, you'd be surprised what God can do with wicked people and what God can do for those who belong to him. Today we are in Nehemiah chapter 4, and some background you need to be familiar with is that Nehemiah is leading his people in rebuilding a wall around Jerusalem. They have to rebuild the wall because sin tore down the first wall. Instead of them talking about what we used to do, they said, we're going to rebuild today. When they moved past talking about yesteryear and said, we're going to do the best we can today, enemies and critical voices came up all around them. But Nehemiah leads us in a great example of how to deal with it. He prayed and worked. Somebody say prayed and worked. Yeah, that goes together. That's what we call prayerful work. You got to pray and work. And because of prayerful work, if you keep on reading to Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15, you will discover that they actually accomplished the building of the wall. As I reflected on this for this hour, it seemed good to urge us that we should counter negativity with prayerful work. That's the thesis. What is he talking about? He said we should counter negativity with prayerful work. So I need to say something about negativity. It catches my attention that we may have never known anything about Sanballat and Tobiah and even the Arabs had it not been for the progress being made by Nehemiah and the Jews. It has been my experience that the more progress you make in doing what God wants you to do, the more haters will come into your life. The further you try to go forward, the more negativity will come in your life to get you to go backwards. I mean, just read the text. In verses 7, 8, and 11, we see the enemy having all kinds of yap to share about rebuilding the wall. But then verse 10 and 12 shows all of the negative talk was not from the outsiders. Verse 10 and 12 shows that some of the insiders, Jews, had adopted a negative spirit. Can I first of all remind us that we should be making progress? When you look at your life, when I look at my life, we ought to be better today than we were this time last year. Discipleship ought to be bigger than the kindergarten stuff of study, serve, and give. Study, serve, and give is kindergarten stuff. It's embarrassing how many people flunk kindergarten. But the preacher came by to tell you the Lord wants us to grow and understand that discipleship ought to encompass every area of your life. Your Jesus stuff ought not be confined to 2 hours on Sunday morning. Jesus want to be in charge of your attitude, your mindset. How many of y'all know the devil wants us to think down so we can behave down? The Lord wants us to look up so we can behave up. It doesn't matter what else you have. If your attitude is not right, you can't even enjoy what you have. Folk can have pockets full of money, but if your attitude is messed up, you can't enjoy your money. If you have longevity with a nasty attitude, you'll just be old and grumpy. Christians ought to work on their attitude. It is an embarrassment to God to be a grumpy Christian. That's an oxymoron. You ought to understand that the joy of the Lord is our strength. It ought not be strange to see a smile on your face. You ought to be known for the fruit of the Spirit. You ought not be known for looking like you are constipated. Working on our discipleship ought to impact our attitude. It ought to impact our health and our wealth. As I see my members getting older right in front of my eyes, I find myself thinking much about golden years. You know, golden years assumes 2 things. It assumes years and gold. How many of y'all know neither one of them are guaranteed? The reason you ought to take care of your health is so you can have some years. There's nothing worse than to have pockets full of money but no health to enjoy your money. I know folk who have worked all their life. They work like a dog all of their life, thinking that when I get to my golden years, then I'm going to really kick back and enjoy retirement. The problem was they neglected their health. And so they got the goal, but their years are not good. You got to take care of your health. And then you got to take care of your wealth, because you can have years but no gold. And there's nothing worse than being 80 years old, having to stand up all day talking about welcome to Walmart. I said there's nothing worse than being 80 years old, having to stand up all day on a concrete floor talking about welcome to Walmart, because you did not take care of your wealth along the way. Big brother, big business cannot be trusted to take care of us. Our discipleship has to be more than churchmanship, has to be more than study, serve, give, look the part on Sunday. Jesus wants control over all of us. There ought to be some progress. Just like you looked at Nehemiah and the Jews putting the wall back together, people ought to be able to